The views and opinions expressed by Jeff Boudreau in connection with the program Financial Fitness produced at the Sun Prairie Media Center are solely those of Jeff Boudreau and do not reflect the views, opinions, or positions of McFarland State Bank or its affiliates.
Hello and welcome to Financial Fitness, a show that focuses on your financial well-being. My name is Jeff Boudreau and I'm a bank manager with McFarland State Bank in Sun Prairie. I've been a bank manager for the last 15 years, and in that time I've seen a lot of clients, many of whom have come to me with problems. Problems like, I need a car but I don't have the money to purchase a car, and so in reality what they need from me is a loan. And now comes the question of, can I afford this car that I need? I've had customers come to me with credit card problems, and usually it's when they have a problem that they come to me saying, I can't afford to make my payments at the end of every month, what can I do? Our goal in the next series of financial fitness shows is going to be to empower you to make conscious choices about your spending so that you can achieve your financial goals. The reason that we've named the show Financial Fitness is to help you understand your finances in a way that most people understand their physical fitness and what it does to improve their quality of life on a daily basis. When you understand what your body's nutritional needs are, and you make sure that that's the food that you're eating, you start to feel more energy, you start to feel more focused, and so you're able to accomplish the goals that you have for yourself in life physically. In the same way, when you understand how you're spending and what you're spending your money on, and you're spending towards a goal, you start to feel that sense of peace that comes from being financially fit. In our first episode, we're going to talk about budgeting. And the reason we're going to talk about budgeting is a good, healthy budget is a foundation for a financially fit life. Most people think that they have an income problem when there's not enough money at the end of the month to pay the bills, when in fact they have a spending problem. We're going to talk about how bank statements show you your past spending, and how your past spending really is the best predictor of your future spending. We're also going to talk about the importance of paying yourself first so that you have that money to spend on the things that you want and not necessarily the things that you need. And finally, we're going to talk about savings as an expense item so that you don't wind up without money at a critical moment when you need it. Joining us today are going to be Rob and Rachel to help show us how to create a budget for ourselves. Joining me today to help demonstrate how to create a budget is Rachel and Rob. There's a few things that you're going to need to create your budget. You're going to need a ruler, a pencil, a notebook, and a bank statement. Rachel is going to demonstrate on the whiteboard how the notebook is going to be used, and Rob is going to demonstrate how your accountability partner can help you create the budget in your notebook. So Rachel and Rob, if you would please go ahead and begin. Rob, begin by reading off where the purchase was made off of the bank statement and how much for. And then Rachel, if you could just create the categories of spending and log what the spending was for. And this is going to represent April's budget month. So if you could just title that second column, okay, April. All right, Rob.
All right. Firefly Coffee House.
And sometimes, Rachel, you can just shorten it to coffee, shorten it to gas for the car. It doesn't have to be specific.
Okay.
And the reason that that's beneficial is that you might not always get coffee at the Firefly, but it's always coffee. So by not making it specific, you can open it up to greater expenses through the month and keep it simpler.
Okay.
So that's $7.29.
Rob, do you think there's going to be a lot from this
category? There's going to be
okay.
a lot in that category.
$7.29?
So $7.29.
Okay, great.
The next one is Netflix. So would there be like an entertainment category, or would you have it broken out like by cable and Netflix and?
You could do either one. What I would suggest is being specific here will help you if you have to come back and cut expenses.
Sure.
You might choose to cancel Netflix but keep cable, or the other way around, as a way of saving money through the month. So here I would be more specific.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
So Netflix was $21.08. Then there's the Market Street Diner.
What do you think about this one, Jeff?
So this one you could call dinner out.
Okay.
And then you could categorize all the dinners out in that section.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Rob, can you tell me that number again? I'm sorry.
I did not give it. $22.53.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then we have Quick Trip. And it's $25.15. So it seems about right for gas, possibly.
Okay.
And you might want to call that gas for the car, because we might not always go to Quick Trip. Sometimes we might go to BP.
Okay. Okay.
But gas for the car is different than gas for the house.
Ah, I see. That makes sense. I'm sorry.
$25.15.
And so, quick sidebar, Jeff. You can get other things at those gas stations.
That's the trick, yeah.
So, but just still keep it under this category.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, when you're trying to get a sense of where your money's being spent, this is the best you're going to be able to do. But that awareness, though, that when you go to the gas station is to buy gas for the car, is what's going to allow you to live within your budget once you set that number.
Okay.
So, Rob, if you think that the expense includes other things like coffee or gum or groceries, because the dollar amounts are significantly different,
Sure.
well, then let's maybe break some of it out so that we keep the gas dollar amounts about the same, because that's probably what's going to be happening going forward.
Okay.
Sure. All right, so then there's headquarters bar and restaurant. So maybe that'd be dinner out again.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
$46.51.
$46.51. Okay.
And then there's insurance. It says that's P&C insurance. So would that be car insurance possibly?
How much is it?
$108.93.
That
Maybe
could
homeowners insurance?
Yeah, it could be either one of those. Or it could be a bundle. And I'm not 100% sure, so why don't we just call it insurance
Call it
right
insurance.
now?
Sure.
And if we come across other types of insurance, then we'll know to be more specific.
Sure. 108.93.
Okay.
All right. Hy-Vee, so groceries.
Good.
Oh. I almost just wrote food, but we've already.
That's good. It's important to distinguish where the food's coming from, if it's
Right.
restaurant food or if it's grocery food.
Right.
That's
okay.
good.
$200.30.
Okay.
DirecTV
Okay.
for $130.97.
100 and I'm sorry.
Yeah, $130.97.
Now, I made a small mistake.
It's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
If you've got the notebook and the pencil, you can erase it.
Okay.
If you're using pen and marker, draw a line through.
Okay.
Credit card payment. So,
Wow. That could encompass a lot of
Like,
things,
right.
though, couldn't it?
I think it's good to call credit card payment for
Okay.
now. What we'll find in later episodes is sometimes it's your debt that's actually creating the biggest pinch on your balanced budget. And there are strategies to eliminate debt that we'll talk about in future episodes. So
Okay.
for right now, when we get to debt, we can group it. And credit card debt's an appropriate grouping.
Okay.
that's $243.68. All right, so we've got Quick Trip. So I'm going to call that gas again because
Okay.
it's $26.44. So it's very close to that other number.
Okay.
All right. Jimmy John's. So
Oh.
that'd be a sad little dinner out.
That's a sad little dinner out.
No offense to Jimmy John's. $6.47.
Okay. Great.
Maria's Pizza. We'll call that dinner out.
All right.
$25.57.
Okay.
Here's a transfer to a savings account. Would we call that a savings?
Yeah,
Very
you can call
specific.
that savings.
Sure. So
Savings.
savings.
And I'm glad that that came up because it's very important when you do your budget that you have a savings category. And the purpose of the savings category is to pay for expenses that don't necessarily come up on a regular basis. So there are some expenses, for example, groceries, which are weekly expenses, but those weekly expenses are going to vary over the month depending on if you have a 5-week month or a 4-week month. There are other variable expenses that come up in the course of a month that are going to depend on which month you're in. The gas that you pay to heat your house is going to be a different bill in December and January than it will be in June and July, for example, and electricity vice versa. And then there's annual expenses that come up, and when they come up, they have to be paid. And some examples of that might be birthdays, Christmases, car repair, doctor, dentist. So many times my clients find when they add up all of those expenses, it could be as much as $500 to $900 a month that needs to be set aside in a savings account, specifically to be spent at some point that year, but not necessarily to be spent this month. And so there's one more category that's very important to have in everybody's budget, and that's your allowance. And so at some point, we're going to want to put that in our budget. Now is probably as good a point as any to just put down the word allowance, and maybe if you split the savings line
Okay.
and put allowance above it,
Okay.
because we know that that's going to be a once per month or twice per month expense.
This is different, I'm sorry, than savings.
It is different, yep. The purpose of an allowance is money that you can spend freely with no accountability. And for today, why don't we just put $25 a week, which would be $100 a month for allowance.
Okay.
And then we'll go back to Rob, and we can put down the exact number that's showing up as a savings transfer.
$300 for savings.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about the weekly, monthly, and annual savings expense? Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, yeah.
It does make sense. Yes, I've heard that concept before. You never know when your car might need an issue, or how big that birthday party will be for your daughter.
And if you don't have it in savings, it goes on the credit card. And that's when the frustration of I just paid my credit card off and now I'm running it back up again. That's that cycle that becomes so frustrating and disappointing that you just decide I'm done with budgets. So we're trying to get ahead of that cycle by preparing for those expenses so we don't have to use credit cards when they come.
That was a great point that you made in terms of how it can be seasonal, whether it's birthdays or like your real estate taxes, or there's these pieces that come up at very certain parts of the year. So
Right.
it's very helpful to think about those things ahead of time. All right, so we've got savings, and then cousin subs.
Okay.
We'll go dinner out on that
Dinner
again.
out again.
Yeah. So $8.84.
Okay. Okay.
Papa Murphy's. We'll call that dinner out.
Okay.
$13.19.
This is an active category.
Walgreens. So health, beauty.
It could be health, it could be beauty if you know specifically what you spent for. And what I would say is most people don't use checkbook registers anymore, whereas 20 years ago probably everybody did. The real benefit of a checkbook register is you had that nice description line where you could write in exactly what you bought. And bank statements don't have that ability. Now, if you write checks, usually at the end of your bank statement, you'll have copies of your checks, and you can open those checks up, and maybe on your memo line, you will have written what was spent and why. But if you're reading off of debit card purchases, you're just going to have this general sense that money was spent at Walgreens. Then you're going to have to use your best guess. If you can't remember specifically using it for health or beauty, then you're going to want to create a category called miscellaneous. The problem with a category called miscellaneous is it can become a catch-all, and it can get pretty big. And if you do have to go back up and start to cut expenses, it becomes really difficult to figure out how much of that miscellaneous category you can take from, not knowing exactly what it was spent on. So those are the hazards, and I would say use your judgment as you're setting your budget up.
In this particular case, it's an even $15, and that sounds like a deductible. So I would almost put that in the health category then.
Okay. Healthcare or health? What do you?
Healthcare?
Okay.
Sure.
That sounds good.
And $15?
15.
Okay, great.
And the next two are Quick Trip again. So, we'll go gas for car. $20.71. And then $26.25.
You can almost see the price at the pump moving around.
Yeah, you can, right? We have Walgreens again, this time for $28.32. So
What do you
sort
think, Rob? Healthcare on this one, or?
I could see somebody spending that much on candy at Walgreens.
True.
We'll go beauty on that one.
Okay. A new category?
Yeah, we'll go with
Okay.
the new category.
And you're going to want to leave some room at the bottom of your notebook page for totaling and netting your expenses out. So if you find yourself getting to the bottom of the notebook page and you still have more categories to go, consider going up and splitting some categories that are only going to have one item in them. For example, Netflix, which is a monthly expense, you're not going to write another number in there. So consider splitting that line in half
Okay.
to create more space for yourself. Insurance might be another category that you can split in half and create more space for yourself. Ideally, you want this budget to fit on one notebook page.
Okay. Sorry, what was that
Yeah,
last one?
2832.
And, okay, next.
So the next one is the headquarters barn. So we'll go to dinner out.
Okay.
3713.
Okay.
Next one is Staples. So office supplies. Maybe there's a general home. Somebody has like a home office. Depends on the budget, I suppose.
Well, and how often do you spend money on home office supplies? I mean, a roll of tape will go pretty far. So
This looks like ink because it's $54.87,
Ink
and
for
those
a
3
toner.
packs seem to be about
yeah,
$50-$60.
so
if
that
you have
might
a printer
happen
at home,
once every, what, 6 months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe on a monthly budget, maybe would you want to split this up to be about $9 because you're trying to figure out what you pay on a monthly?
Yeah, if you're consistently using $58 worth of toner every 3 months, you certainly could divide that and average it. That's actually a great example of an annual expense that you'd want to be saving for every month. And to some extent, you could consider that $9 contribution on a monthly basis a saving, so that at the 3 month, well, the 3 month mark would be $27,
Right.
but you know, at the 6 month and a half mark, you'd have enough money put away in savings that you could afford the ink without having to use a credit card and without having to dip into your expenses for that particular month.
Okay.
So I would probably recommend considering that a savings item as an annual expense, and in that way,
So maybe just put it under like $10 a month for savings?
yeah, sure. You could add
Okay.
$10 a month in the savings category, knowing that you're going to need to buy toner every 6 months.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we got lucky there. That doesn't pop up as obvious a lot
Right,
of times
right.
on a statement, but in this case, you did a good job of intuiting.
Thank you. All right, so we're back to groceries.
Okay.
And that's $192 on the nose.
Okay. All right.
And then there's another credit card payment for $200 even.
Okay. Twice in a month. Correct?
And-
This is still in April?
Yep.
Okay.
And what's interesting here is sometimes families will, when they have a credit card debt, will choose to pay their payment, but then pay as much as they can extra towards debt reduction. So being that that's an even dollar amount, it might be that this family has chosen to earmark $200 a month for a principal pay down on their credit card bill.
Oh,
If there's a very significant plan to knock down that debt.
To knock down the debt when you're not able to pay the credit card bill in full every month, which is what we would hope to be able to do. But we understand from our discussion earlier that if the car needs tires and the only option you've got is your credit card, you've got a bill that's probably not going to be paid off in 1 month, in which case maybe you can make a plan to pay it off in 5 months.
Excellent.
All right, so now we have Firefly Coffee,
Okay.
$5.24.
Okay.
And Charter. Well, maybe we'd make a little Charter underneath DirecTV
Yes.
to
Okay. Good idea.
fit it in near that TV entertainment sort of spot.
Okay.
And that is going to be $63.29.
Okay.
Handy,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I transposed it.
No,
Sorry.
you did
Anyway,
good,
sorry.
yeah.
Handy appliance,
Okay.
$52.70. Miscellaneous, maybe?
Well, here again, if it's $52 and it's at an appliance store, the likelihood is it's got to do probably not with an appliance because it's a little small.
Maybe it's a part.
But I know that Ron sells parts and he sells different products that are used to maintain appliances.
Sure.
So, but for $52, that's a lot of product to maintain an appliance. So it's probably an expense that would come up every few months, but not every month. And again, would probably fall into that savings category.
Okay.
And I don't know what it would be, but maybe put another
$10
$10 a month in savings for whatever that purchase was.
Sure.
That makes sense. Okay.
All right, gas,
Okay.
$21.40.
So there's a lot more expenses I can see on the statement that we could go through, but I hope that you've got an idea of how this process is going to work. Once you get all of your expenses listed on your notebook page, you're going to want to take a step back and you're going to want to make sure two things are present. First is that there's savings present and that you've given some consideration to how much money you want to set aside for those weekly, monthly, and annual expenses that may not be the same or may not come up every month. So make sure that that's being reflected in your savings. And the easy way to do that is to think about what might I need to spend per year on car repair? What might I need to spend per year on birthdays? Most of us know what each birthday is going to be. Multiply that by how many birthdays you're going to have. And once you can figure out what that number is for the year, divide it by 12 and make that your monthly expense. Beyond that, you're going to also want to make sure that you've got your allowance listed, and I see that you did there, because it's really important that you pay yourself first. For this budget to work going forward, you're going to need to pay yourself some money that you don't necessarily have to be held accountable for. So once you have those items on your budget, you're going to list your income, your take-home income at the top, and subtract your total expenses from your take-home income. So the next step might be to go into April and total up all of the expenses in the category. And then you take the expenses totaled, net that out of your take-home income, and that number that's left over would hopefully be zero, so that your income equals your expenses. In the event that your income minus expenses leaves you with money left over, you want to go back up into savings and add that to savings, because you can always use more savings. If your income minus expenses leaves you short of money, you're going to want to go back up into your expenses, and you're going to want to make some conscious decisions about where you can spend less money until you get to the point where your income minus expenses equals zero. And occasionally you will get a situation where your income minus expenses does not equal zero. No matter what you do, you cannot cut any more expenses. And when that happens, you need to start to consider alternative sources of income. And in one of our upcoming segments, Peter Kern is going to join me to discuss alternative sources of income. So we've talked about balancing the budget and the importance of balancing the budget. There's a couple of things that are missing from this initial project, and that is the month of May and the month of June, the way that we've laid this out. So it's going to be very important to go through several months. 3 months, I'd say minimum. 6 months is plenty. The reason for that is you're going to want to find an average spending per category, and that number is going to be the most accurate when you have more data over time. So if you were to list May and June and then add up how much was actually spent in each month, then you would want to add those 3 months together and divide by 3. That will become your budgeted number for that particular category. We talked a minute ago about the importance of the expenses being subtracted from the take-home income equaling zero. Assuming that we've got ourselves to zero, now I'm going to talk about how you live within your budget. And there's 3 main ways to live within your budget. The first way is the notebook system itself. You're used to it, you're comfortable with it, it's how you created your budgeted number. So now you simply start over on another page with the future months upcoming. And as you spend in those categories, you subtract what you spent from your budgeted number until you have nothing more to spend in that category. And when you have nothing more to spend in that category, you cannot spend in that category without taking the money from a different category or running the risk that your budget won't balance at the end of the month. So that first way of living within your budget we'll call the notebook system. The second way of living within your budget is very similar to the notebook system. For those of you that are comfortable with computers, simply using an Excel spreadsheet and setting it up the same way, or using software like QuickBooks or Quicken, uses the same concept of daily, weekly tracking through the month against your budgeted number. The difference is when you use a spreadsheet, obviously you can put formulas in there and you can have the balance calculated for you to make it easier to know how much you've left to spend. The third way, and a very popular way for a lot of people, is called the envelope system. And there's two main ways to use the envelope system in a budget. The first way is to actually take the cash that you've budgeted per category and put it in an envelope with that category's name on it. As you spend out of that envelope, there's only so much remaining, and when the envelope is empty, you can't spend in that category any longer. The downside of that is if there was a fire or theft, you could lose all of your envelopes and have no cash for the month. And so an alternative way of using the envelope system is to keep the envelope with the name of the spending category and the budgeted amount on it, but to put receipts in the envelope instead of take cash out. And when those receipts equal the budgeted amount, you are no longer able to spend in that category. Whatever system you use should be a system that comes natural to you, that's very comfortable for you to use to ensure that you'll continue to stay with it. If you have any other questions about how to budget or how to live within your budget, or once you've budgeted, how to live with your budget, you can always feel free to come and see me at McFarland State Bank. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Financial Fitness, and I look forward to seeing you in future segments.
The views and opinions expressed by Jeff Boudreau in connection with the program Financial Fitness produced at the Sun Prairie Media Center are solely those of Jeff Boudreau and do not reflect the views, opinions, or positions of McFarland State Bank or its affiliates.